I think that we have established that we want to somehow take the users who are mentioned inside of a caption and store them or model them in some way inside the database, so that we could, in the future, run queries like the ones you see on the bottom right-hand side here. We could figure out how often a user is being mentioned, who's the most popular, or whatever else. So now the question becomes, we kind of have two ideas of mentioning or tagging around a post. So inside the context of a post, you can now mention or tag a user in the content or the caption of the post, but you can also kind of tag or mention a user inside of a photo as well. Now, at first glance, these might seem like two very different things. One is a tag or mention that occurs in text, the other is a tag or a mention that occurs in a photo. So it might seem like two different things, but think about the actual behavior of these two things inside of our app. Either way, whether we are mentioning a user inside of text or a photo, the end result is kind of similar. We are trying to draw another user's attention or kind of tag a user to a post we are creating. Whether that takes the form of some text or as some label inside of a photo, not super relevant. What's really relevant is the end product. We're trying to tag a user to a post. So the next question we have to ask ourselves here is, should we model a tag or a mention inside of a caption in the same way or model it together as a tag or mention in a photo? Should these things be modeled together or separately? Because at the end of the day, they're kind of achieving the same thing. So with that in mind, we're going to take a look at two possible solutions to this, because these really feel like two resources that are very closely related. So here's possible solution number one. In possible solution number one, we might have just one single table of tags to model a mention inside of a caption and mentions on a photo. And the way that we might distinguish between these would be the X and Y coordinate. So we could say that if we ever have a mention inside of a photo, then we'll create a record inside of tags. We'll provide the ID of the user who was mentioned, the ID of the post that the mention was added to, and then the X and Y coordinate of the mention inside the photo. So same thing we discussed just a moment ago. And then maybe if we ever add in a mention to a user inside of a caption, we could just set the X and Y values to null, which indicates or is a sign to you and I that this is a tag that occurred in a caption as opposed to a photo. Now, the upside to this is that it means that we've got one single table of all the mentions or all the tags that ever occur in any post. So if we ever want to see how often some given user is being mentioned inside of any number of posts, we only have to look at this one single table. It's a single resource for recording how often a user is being mentioned or tagged. And the only real difference between these two forms of tags is really the presence of that XY coordinate. There's not really a lot more to distinguish between these two types beyond that. Nonetheless, I can agree with you if this feels funny. Yeah, it kind of does feel funny, right? And we're talking about a tag in text versus a tag on a photo. So if you are looking at this first solution and saying, you know what, Stephen, no, these are two different things, we should model them separately. You know, I agree with you. I'll be totally honest. I just wanted to mention this as a possible solution because I think that's not the worst thing in the world and you could definitely get away with it. So if we want to treat these as two separate kinds of resources or two separate kinds of tags, maybe a better solution would be to make two separate tables, one called photo tags and one called caption tags. And then the only real difference between these is that photo tags has the XY coordinate of where the tag was applied in a photo, and caption tags has just the ID of the user that was mentioned and the post that they were mentioned in. And that's pretty much it. So now we've got the two separate tables, and it's a lot more clear that, okay, here's all the tags that occurred inside of a caption, here are all the tags that occurred inside of a photo. So out of these two possible solutions, which one is better? Well, maybe neither is necessarily better. Again, solution number one feels just a little bit weird, but it does still kind of make sense to just lump all these tags together because, again, at the end of the day, they're really achieving the exact same result. It is bringing a user's attention to some given post. So to decide between one of these solutions, here's what I would say instead. Here's what you should use as guidance. First off, do you ever expect to query for caption tags, so a tag inside of a caption, and photo tags, so a tag that occurs inside of a photo, at different rates? In other words, do you ever expect to have to run queries against caption tags like 10 times more frequently than for photo tags? If that is the case, then you might want to split these out into two separate tables. We haven't really spoken a lot about performance inside of Postgres just yet. We will eventually, but there are definitely some performance optimizations that we could apply to just the caption tags table if it turns out that we are running queries on that table or looking for caption tags much more frequently. So we could apply those optimizations to just that table and not have to worry about applying the same optimizations to photo tags if we're not running queries on that table quite as often. Doing an optimization like that would be a lot more challenging if we had everything combined together on one single table. The other big driver here, and I think that this is the question that would really drive us towards solution number 2, does the meaning of a photo tag, so a tag applied to a photo, do we ever expect that to gain functionality or to change in some way as our application changes? In other words, do we ever want to add in more functionality to a photo tag? Like, do we want to add in the ability to add a comment to a photo tag or add a like to a photo tag or something like that? If we ever expect a photo tag to kind of change in functionality, then, well, that would really drive us towards solution number 2, because that means we could start making changes to our photo tags table without having to worry about the impact on that separate definition of a tag that occurred inside of a caption. The opposite is true as well. If we ever want to add more functionality to a tag that has been created inside of a caption, that'd be a lot easier to do if we had a separate table just for tags that occurred inside of a caption. Okay, so that's our thoughts on this. So we're going to go with solution number 2 here. I apologize for the long this video and the long last video, but this design stuff, this is like the real meat and potatoes of database stuff. Writing SQL and queries, that's all stuff that you can Google for endlessly and you can kind of fiddle around with until you get it right. But understanding database design, this is what you really want to learn and understand from the get-go, as opposed to kind of figuring out along the way. So again, I apologize for the long videos, but kind of a necessity. All right, so we're going to go with solution number 2. Quick pause right here, and we'll implement that in the next video.